How do we know when we're rolling? All right. Hi, my name is Priscilla Ybarra, and I want to tell you a story about my parents teaching me a lesson. So when I was about 9 years old, which means I think I was probably about in the third grade, my parents decided that they were going to teach me where food came from. That food does not come from the grocery store. In order to teach me this lesson, they decided that they were going to buy a live chicken and behead it in front of my brother and me. Now, I kind of wondered, isn't there a different way to teach us this lesson? Maybe they could tell us stories about where food comes from, or read us a book, or show us a movie or a TV show. And I think probably they did at some point. But, there comes a point where stories can't really compare with real life experience. So I guess that's when they decided that they were going to buy a chicken and behead it in front of us. So this happened at the house where we lived, and where we lived with this white frame house with peeling paint and kind of shotgun style, one side of a duplex. We had kind of a long, narrow yard in the back. At the very back of the yard, there was a mulberry tree that I like to climb up to and, eat the berries and read in the bough of in the hug of the tree. Parts of the yard would flood, and when it rained, and the frogs would come alive in those little, looked like ponds to me. There was a fence between our yard and the next yard, and there were honeysuckle bushes entwined in that fence. And somehow the fence was really old, and it had kind of a hump in it, and I would climb up in there, and I felt like I was laying in a bed of honeysuckle, and I would just pick the honeysuckles, and you know how you peel it apart and then suck the honey from the flower. So I felt like my world was alive there in that house. And where they decided that they were going to teach me this lesson was at about halfway down our dirt driveway. There was some cement stairs that came down from a door to our house. And I remember sitting there when the event was going to take place and just watching everyone kind of prepare. So this is the point in the story when I tell you what it looked like, right? The gory details. I actually do not remember the actual gory details. What I remember, so I'm not going to put you through that, but what I remember is that they decided to do this, right? And then I wondered, why are you doing this beyond teaching us this lesson that food comes from more than just the store? And I think it had a lot to do with teaching us how different their lives were from ours. Both of my parents grew up in an agricultural context. My father was born in 1918 and grew up during the Great Depression as a migrant farm worker, so working hard on the land throughout his whole childhood. My mother grew up on a cotton farm in northern Mexico during the 1930s and 40s, and she immigrated to the U.S. when she was 18 years old. But up until then, her whole life was just shaped by the weather and the plants, and that really drove their fate. So I think that's what they were really asking us to recognize. Beyond that, food comes from more than just when you show up at the store, that our lives we're so different from theirs. And in a certain way, that taught me that my life was meant to honor what they had gone through in a certain way. How could my life value the difficulties that they faced up to and worked through in order to put us in the situation that we were, to be able to go to school and learn and choose the career that we wanted to choose. I didn't realize it at the time, but now that I look back on it, that's what the beheading of a chicken taught me. Thank you.